Honda is refusing to be the scapegoat in Aston Martin's mess. And it's clear they learned a thing or two from Max Verstappen. All through the art of straight talking. I think it's safe to say that Aston Martin haven't exactly floated through testing on a golden cloud. The dream was that the Works Team era has begun. The reality so far is that the Works Team era has begun, and immediately tripped over itself. And because they got a Honda badge on the back of it, everyone's immediately taking their minds back to 2015 and are just thinking that Honda are the sole problem of the entire project. They look back at the 3 years of pain that McLaren endured, and for all of that time, even when Zak Brown arrived, everything, their problems, were all revolving around Honda. Until 2018 happened when they realised, oh, the problems within our organisation were even worse than we thought. And that's why Eric Bouillet got the job. McLaren had plenty of stuff to fix of their own. That history is vital to remember here, because it's the lens people are using right now, whether it fits or not. Because this time around, Honda are not going to just stand there and absorb the blame. They've gone unusually open about what happened with their power unit and the integration with the car. Honda Racing's Iko Takeshi and Koji Watanabe basically laying out to us in plain engineering English. And I shall share this with you for your consideration, and it just goes to show that even though Honda is defending itself, it's not exactly blaming Aston either, it's something they're in together. Abnormal vibrations occurred and caused damage to the battery system. This was the main reason the car had to stop. That's the infamous one of Alonso stopping out on track and why they only got 6 laps in on the final day of testing in Bahrain. We are investigating the cause on the power unit side, while the chassis side is also implementing countermeasures. Specifically at Sakura, we're using the real vehicle dyno to simulate the actual vibrations and analyze them. I imagine that's also something to do with virtual testing. We're currently testing multiple countermeasure proposals. Simply put, abnormal vibration caused by combined factors during running damaged the battery system. We are working to improve it before the opening race. The vibration caused damage to the battery. Whether the battery itself is the fundamental cause is unknown. Now, again, you might be thinking that Honda is about to pull out the trigger and just say Aston Martin's at the fault and you should blame Adrian Newey. Well, they're not exactly doing that. They are saying that they are working on it, and there's a plan. They've described the failure mode right here, and what they've been able to reproduce, and what exactly they've done with testing right here. And by choosing the words battery system, it's not necessarily talking about the battery itself, but all the gubbins around it as well. This isn't one isolated brick here, people. It might be the entire wall that needs reprofiling or repairing or struck down to then rebuild over the course of 2026. And the awkward part for Aston in terms of Clout is, do you have a world title affiliated to you? No? Well then hear us out, okay? Don't put all of the eggs in our basket. Because the last decade, they've worked with McLaren, Toro Rosso, and Red Bull. And they do have a fair share of pedigree amongst those 3 teams, don't they? You might be thinking, Toro Rosso? Really? Well, I mean, come on, Minardi, the perennial underdogs, and also affiliated with the Red Bull project. They gave some miles too, you know. Naturally, Aston Martin wants to be that. Papa Stroll says they're that, but having the ingredients of a super team isn't the same as actually baking the cake, so Honda's tone is louder and calmer at the same time, because they got enough credibility to refuse the it's all on the engine debate. And Aston, they've really not got much clout to clap back or maybe say that that's complete bulldookie. And the more you read between the lines, the more you realise Honda's doing something that feels almost alien in modern F1 communication, because they're describing the failure mode like grown-ups. They're not oversimplifying things, yet neither are they going into the real big minutiae that James Vowles has become infamous for, as in we're not getting a 20-minute lecture about it, and whilst we appreciate it, you are left a little bit mentally exhausted. No, Honda's gone for the middle way, that they've gathered all of the data that they possibly could get, and have been able to reproduce circumstances on their actual test benches. And Aston Martin and Honda are able to figure out some kind of countermeasure that might be able to save their bacon in that, hey, they might actually be able to do a race distance and then go from there. The important thing about this is that there's no melodrama here. There's no Honda going, oh, woe is us, or give us time, we are brand new to this thing called Formula One. Oh no, we were late, because they were actually late in starting development of their power unit when they are announcing with their partnership in Aston Martin in 2023. And also, the Honda that we are seeing with Aston is not the same Honda that we saw with Red Bull Racing. The majority of that personnel either remained with Red Bull to work on the powertrain division with Ford, or got scattered amongst the winds across the F1 grid entirely. What we've seen right now is a rebuilt Honda Racing with different people, although the same management structure is there, so it would take time for them to regain that prestige that they had in the early 2020s. But crucially, for any Aston Martin fans out there, Honda are not speaking as if they are panicking. They are talking about the process and that there is no chaos to be had here, even though the damage to the pre-season testing campaign for them and Aston was absolutely cataclysmic. And also the major green flag for them, not Aston Martin green, but an actual green flag, is that they have been able to replicate the problem on their real vehicle dyno at their base in Sakura. That is a really big deal. They're not chasing ghosts in the machine or anything like that. And also, it's very important to remind ourselves, and Honda is trying to, is that it's not a case of a Formula One car being just an engine and a car. There's about roughly 17,000 bits and bobs that go into making a proper racing outfit. And these bits can do a lot of things when under a lot of pressure, and they have various consistencies. Some bits are stiff, some bits are flexible, some rotate and get really, really hot, and they all have their own natural frequencies. Each part has its own idea of what vibes look like and feel like. And when two of those frequencies line up, oops, you've got yourself some resonance. And resonance is the cosmos pointing at your design and going, nah mate, that ain't it. And Honda, they've seemingly been stuck in resonance hell. They also say that they didn't really see this coming after certain developments went in a very different direction that they weren't privy to before Adrian Newey arrived. And you might be then thinking, aha! It is Adrian Newey's fault. I knew it! It's the MP418 all over again. It's the RB3 all over again. Although I do realistically think it is actually more like an RB3 situation than an MP418, as in actual drivers are willing to drive it, whereas the MP418, nobody wanted to touch that. But the reality is that Adrian Newey was under major crunch, and he had to come up with something that would actually run and maybe have a chance of being competitive in this regulation cycle. So therefore, naturally, some problems arose that Aston Martin didn't see coming. And they also say multiple factors have generated the vibration, and they can't guarantee fixing one will actually solve the whole thing. It might be up to Aston Martin to change something in the design to help solve the issues faster. But this is Adrian Newey we're talking about here, and he doesn't enjoy compromise. If the fix requires packaging concessions, that's going to be a very interesting meeting. He might have to, if he and Papa Stroll want this team to get back on his feet, because the battery damage might be a symptom of something to do with frequency between the power unit's vibrations and the chassis' response. And Honda's laying down the boundaries in their relationship now. It's actually gotten off to a somewhat start, and laying down that boundary with a set of rulers and set square. This is what we provided you. You've got to uphold your end of the bargain too. We're a works team. We know how to be a works team. Do you want to learn how to be a works team? Then listen to us, and then maybe we can come up with something good. But I'm not going to be sitting around here, Honda is saying, and allowing you to turn us into the butt monkey in this relationship. But then we all hear about Honda having problems, we hear about Honda vibrations, design bottlenecks, and are immediately screaming, GP2 engine, GP2, and then just leaving it at that, and then just thinking, Honda, yeah, it's Honda's fault. I've seen the memes, I've seen the generated video of Alonso punching Honda directors in the face, thinking it's 2015 all again. Have you heard Fernando be critical of Honda? No. He's actually the most optimistic guy in the room at the moment. And even his buddy Pedro de la Rosa is saying, hey, let's not point fingers here. And you remember the relationship Pedro and Fernando had during 2007 and Crash Game and all of that? That got really complicated. It's not complicated here at all. So don't worry about that. Fernando's not the problem. But the reality here might be actually a little bit nastier than that, because power units, engines, they can vibrate within a Formula One car, but its frequency with the particular chassis that it's built around and the components that connect it to the car, that might be where the issue is. All of those amplifying around the worst possible place, meaning that, well, the battery conks out, doesn't it? And batteries, as we've been told in electric cars, they are pretty heavy, and heavy things do not like being shaken around, especially when they are heavy things doing a whole lot of charging and discharging, then using the boost and the overtake and the recharge. It's doing a lot of things, and then you're asking it, and it's bouncing over the curves and then the bumpy track, and then you've actually got yourself a stress test of fatigue going on. And Honda even referred to that. They mentioned track input could affect the vibration even more, and they can't yet say whether suspension might be contributing to it. And Honda doesn't make suspension, Aston do, so it's up to them to figure it out, especially considered with the rear suspension, it's no longer being supplied by a third party. in this case Mercedes. In short, the issue might not necessarily be due to Honda, but by the entire system packaged around it. And the manufacturer is trying to make sure everyone knows about this in a way which very much sounds like Max Verstappen coached them to say it. He's not polite for the sake of it either. He is precise because precision kills many arguments, and as we've seen in recent times, especially over the course of 2025, many people are actually stopping and going, oh, actually, Max has a point, and have therefore been gaining a little bit more respect with him being seen as a genuine racer who is trying to preserve the sanctity of Formula One as it's being threatened by the 2026 regulations in some circles. And the whole dance from Stefano Domenicali saying everything is fine. But the reality is that Max Verstappen's gotten them, the FIA, over a barrel. Them more than happy to actually talk to Max, and him actually getting more stuff done than the feedback from Lewis and the feedback from Fernando. And as for Lando Norris, I've got no clue what he thinks about these cars. Does he like them or does he not like them? Or is he more than happy to just troll the grid because he can now because he's a world champion? You've got the respect of the Tifosi in some ways, and that's saying something after years of denying Il Predestinato a chance at the world title. And clearly, Honda's learnt a thing or two after working closely with him for several years. In fact, actually equating him to their modern-day succession story, actually succeeding Ayrton Senna's status of being Honda's racing god. Them just deciding to take Max's style and using it in corporate engineering and PR. And them wanting to be precise rather than being polite or not saying anything at all. And again, it's not a mistake of them saying battery system rather than just the battery, because there's a lot of stuff that goes around that thing. There is a difference. A battery system includes the mounts, the casing, the cooling, the wiring, sensors, and the bits that connect it to the rest of the car. When you say system, other things are at play here. And Honda, they supply the power unit, and it's up to Aston's mechanics to help slot it in cleanly. So if your battery system is even slightly unhappy, you lose performance and your ability to actually get the lap time the aero team wants you to get, to help find out their findings if they're good or not. And then we get to Aston's wider situation. And then recently, Fernando Alonso said Aston are currently 1 month behind schedule because other teams have run as early as the first half of January. That's Audi with their shakedown around Barcelona, then had a month to analyse data and solve early problems. And as I talked about on Friday, Audi have actually really come on song throughout the entire testing phase, really one of the darlings of the midfield because they were able to start 3 weeks early before anyone else. And Fernando also points out that they missed a lot of testing around the shakedown, they even missed out filming days, and only at Bahrain were they able to even get anywhere close to a testing program of any kind, even though they actually accrued the least amount of mileage, half that of Cadillac. To him, every single run had a small issue here or there, so they had a patchwork quilt of testing data to pass through, which wasn't of the best quality, almost incompatible with life in the wind tunnel. It's not exactly glamorous, if you can probably tell. It's death by 1,000 cuts. If you want to test something, oops, the sensor's broken, you're going to have to remain in the garage for an hour. And then the track conditions change, and the data that you might have been able to get in the morning is completely irrelevant to what you might get later on in the afternoon. And with Bahrain being the difference between night and day, it is night and day. Because a lot of testing in the daytime just has no translation, or very little, to what goes on at night when the races actually run. Although, mind you, due to the current geopolitical climate, there's no telling we'll actually even get there to actually see it for real. Now connect that to Newey, because he said in terms of developing the car itself, they were at one point 4 months behind development because of the fact that they only got their wind tunnel model ready around mid-April, not long after he actually started, whereas other teams, including Williams, were able to start properly in earnest again on January the 2nd of that same year. But hang on, Law, isn't what Fernando said a good thing? Because Newey said 4 months, Fernando says 1 month, so they caught up 3 months in all of this time? Yeah, that's good. Yes, I do hear you, but they are talking from different perspectives. One's talking about the track stuff, one's talking about the design stuff, and I think you can tell which one is which. And that combination is really brutal because you're being squeezed in both directions. You have less time to discover problems and less time to design your way out of those problems. So a vibration issue can turn really bad quickly. The first time you run anywhere close to hard, the physics will just tell you, nope. Not exactly the vision of success Papa Stroll envisioned. And it gets worse when Bernie Ecclestone gives you a cold slap in the face to wake Lawrence up even more after the hangover of 2026 was given to him, that you just can't buy titles. Bernie actually saying, and he actually is qualified to say this because he's been around the block quite a few times as a team owner, team manager, and actually being the kingpin of Formula One for decades, that you can't just spend your way towards glory. That you could spend your whole life chasing a dream when you just don't get your puzzle pieces actually slotting together properly. And he actually cites Ferrari, that even though in theory they have everything ready to go for a title run, they have been really dry in terms of success since 2008. 2024, though, it was agonizingly close, wasn't it? Just imagine what would have happened if Ferrari actually won the Constructors in 24. And Bernie's not just being wise for the sake of it, he's telling his friend about what traps he might actually find himself in, and so far Aston Martin have fallen into every single trap. And they are really trying their best not to blame anybody, but I can really tell they want to. Or just live in a state of delusion. But the missing puzzle piece that I think Papa Stroll is missing is that of integration. In that, sure, you can have every single talented engineer under the sun. You can have all of the facilities that you want, but if they're not integrated properly, it doesn't count for toffee. You know, the ability of the fairy godmother from Cinderella and going, put it together and what have you got? Bibbidi bobbidi boo. So far it's bibbidi bobbidi blah. Your carriage to the ball that will afford you a constructor's or driver's trophy. And that might be why Honda is confident to say what they're saying right now, because they've been through all of this quite a few times in the last few years. They've seen this movie before, it easily becomes a blame game, and they're choosing not to play the game. Just look at the way they talk about ownership. They're investigating the matter from their own side of things, while the chassis side is also implementing their own stuff. They're saying Aston is involved and are proposing solutions with fixes, planned for the first couple of races to at least minimise the damage, and hey, at least they're working together. But it's also left a paper trail that Aston are also holding the bag, but the fix itself, it has to be carefully selected, as they can easily add weight or change something else about the car in a negative way that causes more problems. And the scariest reliability problems are not often broken parts but unexpected loads. A part can really be strong yet still fail because you didn't anticipate something might actually happen. It goes to the thing I talked about earlier on in the video, that it might have been a situation that Aston's really had to suffer through for quite a few years now, and that's to do with the fact that their simulator and reality do not align with one another, and it sent them down very, very tragic paths. Yes, my friend, I'm talking about correlation. And as we've heard plenty of times, Adrian Newey has admitted that they've got really big issues with correlation. They're still working through the data, and it won't be until next year when the simulator will be up to Newey's scratch. So what might have happened with this engine might not have been to do with any part breaking or something being a little bit fragile. It might have been just down to the correlation gap, that it was just data that they didn't see, and once they do find the data, which it sounds like they have because they've been able to reproduce the scenario, they can find ways to fix it, or at least make it less of a problem to then maybe reinforce it later on without having a weight impact. But admittedly, Honda has said that there is no miracle cure. It has to be something that comes from both sides of the fence. Or the garage. Now, okay, the memes, I get it. People have already reached for the McLaren era of things because it's already there, but at the same time, it's a really lazy way to go about things because we've not actually even started the season yet. It's not a case of necessarily reliability being at the core of Honda's issues. It's all about the integration. That's been the major issue. That's why Aston Martin have not been able to do all of the running, because they've not integrated the car and the engine properly, because they can't rely on major suppliers like Mercedes to help them out with the power unit and the rear suspension and the gearbox. Remember, Aston Martin are making their own gearbox for the first time. Mike Crack, the trackside official, has said that it's been one of their dreams, Aston, to make a gearbox of their own. And this dream's turning into a major nightmare that's costing them, according to Crack, $9 to $10 million a year. And that, I'm going to pull out some Irish phrasing here, is not good crack. And also, the McLaren-Honda era had real Honda problems attached to them, and real McLaren problems going for it too. It took years for the public to accept that both sides had issues, and that's the danger for Honda now. They can do a lot right and still be branded as the villains early, even though, again, Fernando has actually said nothing to that effect. Therefore, Honda's response is basically a preemptive defense move against lazy history, throwing out very plain-talking engineering details and acting like Max Verstappen and not tolerating any of that bull. And because this is a works partnership, Honda's reputation is very much on the line in the same way that Aston Martin's is, even though they don't design the chassis. If Aston's integration is messy, people are just going to look to Honda being the newcomers and just point at them anyway. Or they'll point at Lance Stroll. So do take heed, folks, these two are in this together. You can't blame one factor the most. It's something to do with them coming together in one unglorious whole. Yet Honda will not sit back and be allowed to be seen as a scapegoat, because they want this partnership to work really well. They do not want to throw Aston Martin under the bus, but neither are they willing to just take this lying down. They're just saying, hey, we found a problem. It might not necessarily be to do with our own power unit. We'll have some fixes, but Aston will have some fixes too. It'll all be all right, friends. Just wait. We've got this. That's what they're trying to say. So when people ask, including myself, is Alonso's optimism a good thing? Well, I mean, obviously it is, because the memes aren't coming from him specifically. He's actually being really, really calm and mature about this. And as he said, he has faith that Aston can stabilize their operations and come up with something good once they fix the problem. That, admittedly, he says, Fernando, it's not a chassis side problem, but he's not talking about from the design perspective. He's talking about, hey, to me, the chassis feels fine. It's just a case of making sure you don't get the frequencies lining up in a way which causes the whole thing to collapse. Once they get that, they might be able to get to a way where Aston can be successful and boring. Like Bernie is trying to say, hey, that's what you need to do to get your integration right if you want to be successful, because just throwing money at problems, like I saw with Toyota, does not guarantee you success. So Honda doing this isn't some kind of ego trip. This season is a full reset. Everybody is learning, and the ultimate winners of this will be the ones who can learn the fastest out of anyone on the grid and ultimately have the fewest surprises going for them. So Aston might start off badly, but if they can develop their way out of this issue and then unlock the car's full potential, they can surge back up the order again to get, at the very least, get back to where they were in 2025 when Honda and Alonso can actually get into Q3 and get some solid points. And Lance, well, just not being Q1 all the time. At least no one in the organisation is blindly saying everything is fine. I will give Aston Martin credit for that. I will give them some foam for thought that, hey, they're not as delusional as I've seen them be the last few years. They actually realise, hey, there is a problem. So Honda's just trying to stop Aston from blaming them. That's all he's got to do. Just try and keep and stay the course and actually be mature about this and talk like proper corporate engineers. So the takeaway here. The pain that Aston and Honda have been experiencing, oh, that's real, all right. The question, though, isn't, is Honda rubbish? It's where the vibration is being born and why the whole car is letting it reach the battery system hard enough to do damage. Honda putting the mechanism on the table this early isn't an ego trip either, but more about survival. It's a preemptive strike against lazy history repeating itself, and reminding Aston that they are a team and they want to be a team. They're almost saying, hey, we know that we dropped the ball with McLaren, but McLaren dropped the ball too. And then they spent the final phase of that relationship actually ending the relationship early by just blaming us entirely, this being led by, of course, Zach Brown. You've only got to look to that Amazon documentary that McLaren did in 2017 called Grand Prix Driver. I don't know if it's still there in your territory, but Zach was jubilant in getting rid of that Honda contract, tearing it up a year early, thinking that would have been the answer to McLaren's problems. It was not. It took many years to get back to where they were. They had to really dig deep in the organisation and change it from within. They couldn't just swap out a Honda engine for a Renault one. It helped a bit, but it wasn't the cure-all. So Honda's learnt from that and said to Aston, I'm not going to put up with any of this. You are going to help me and help us get this sorted out so we can give Alonso his 33rd win and prove that we can do well and that we also can get championships. And maybe one day get Max Verstappen on board, because Honda have said that they would like to have some say in the lineup in the not too distant future. And your not too distant future is you clicking onto this video right here, which I know you will enjoy. I'll see you over there.